What if I told you that most people are not struggling with money because they lack effort, intelligence, or discipline, but because they are obeying rules that were never designed for them to win? In nature, survival does not belong to the strongest, nor the fastest, but to those who notice when the environment has changed and quietly adapt. Money behaves in much the same way. And yet, all around us, I see people clinging to financial rules learned long ago, rules passed down with good intentions, even as the ground beneath them slowly shifts. Today, I want to sit with you and explore something rarely spoken aloud, the hidden laws of money, and why those who appear to break them are often not reckless at all, but deeply observant. Once you see this, you may never invest or think about the economy in quite the same way again. If you are watching this, there's a good chance you feel an unease you cannot fully name. You may be working hard, saving diligently, doing what you were told was sensible, and yet the future feels fragile. Prices rise, systems strain, certainty dissolves. This video is for you. Not to scare you, and certainly not to sell you shortcuts, but to offer clarity. Because the great misunderstanding of our time is this: when the world becomes unstable, most advice grows louder but less useful. What you need is not more noise, but a clearer way of seeing, not rebellion, but realism. I have spent a lifetime observing complex systems, forests, oceans, species under pressure, and again I have seen the same pattern repeat. Collapse rarely announces itself with drama. It arrives quietly, gradually, almost politely. The signs are subtle at first. A migration shifts, a season arrives early, a familiar rhythm no longer fits. Those who survive are not the ones who deny the change, nor those who panic. They are the ones who pause, observe, and reposition themselves calmly. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a wide, patient river. For centuries, it flows in a predictable path, nourishing the villages built along its banks. The people grow confident. They build homes closer to the water. They write rules about where it is safe to stand. But rivers are alive. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, this one begins to change course. Not violently, not suddenly, just enough that over time, the old banks begin to erode. Some villagers notice. They feel the ground soften beneath their feet. Others dismiss it. The river has always been here, they say. It will not betray us now. Years pass. One season, the water rises just a little higher than expected, not enough to cause alarm, but enough to destroy everything built too close to the old edge. The river did not break the rules. The people simply mistook the past for a promise. The economy works this way. It is not a machine with fixed instructions. It is a living system. And when people say, "I don't trust the economy anymore," what they're really saying is, the rules I learned no longer match what I am seeing. That discomfort is not weakness, it is awareness. Many of us were taught a simple story about money. Work hard, save consistently, avoid risk, follow the rules. And for a long time, in a stable environment, this worked reasonably well. But stability is not permanent. It never has been. In nature, there is no such thing as a forever climate. There are only phases, seasons, cycles. To treat any system as fixed is to misunderstand life itself. Now, this is the part where many voices begin shouting, predict the crash, time the market, escape the system entirely. But I want to offer you something far quieter and far more powerful. When animals sense danger, they do not obsess over the future. They do not argue with reality. They prepare. A squirrel does not know how harsh the winter will be. It does not need to. It gathers, it diversifies, it builds resilience, not certainty, resilience. This is the heart of investing when you do not trust the economy. You stop trying to be right, and you start trying to be ready. There is a great misconception that the people who succeed financially during uncertain times are bold risk takers, rule breakers in the reckless sense. But when you look closely, the opposite is often true. They are careful, calm. They ask different questions. While others ask, what is the safest choice? They ask, what fits the world as it is now? Consider two individuals, both hardworking, both intelligent. One follows every rule exactly as taught, saves in familiar places, invests only when everything feels comfortable. The other does something quieter. They study patterns. They notice which businesses survive stress, which skills remain useful across change, which assets bend instead of break. Over time, the difference becomes profound, not because one worked harder, but because one was paying closer attention. This is where the idea of breaking laws becomes misunderstood. The laws that matter most in investing are not moral rules. They are contextual. They are born of a specific time, a specific environment. And when the environment changes, the law must change with it. Following an outdated rule is not discipline, it is inertia. In nature, rigidity is dangerous. The most fragile species are often the most specialized. They thrive in perfect conditions and collapse when those conditions shift. Generalists survive. Adapters endure. Investors are no different. You see, risk is not what most people think it is. Risk is not movement. Risk is fragility. Risk is having no options. Risk is placing all your trust in one outcome, one system, one promise. Holding cash can feel safe, but over time it quietly erodes. Chasing growth can feel exciting, but without structure it can destroy you. The goal is not avoidance. The goal is balance. So what does this look like in practice? First, you stop outsourcing your thinking. Headlines are not designed to help you. They are designed to capture attention. Fear is efficient that way, but fear is a poor investment advisor. Instead, you ask calmer questions. If this system weakens, what still holds value? If conditions worsen, what remains useful? If things improve, what grows naturally? Second, you invest in what adapts. Businesses that solve real problems, skills that transfer across industries, assets that do not depend on perfection to survive. You avoid complexity that you do not understand, not because it is dangerous, but because confusion breeds panic. Third, you build optionality. Multiple paths, multiple outcomes. You prepare not for one future, but for many. This is not pessimism, it is maturity. And perhaps most importantly, you cultivate emotional stillness, because the greatest threat to your financial life is not inflation or volatility or even recession. It is panic. Panic causes people to sell low, to freeze when they should move, to move when they should wait. Calm, on the other hand, creates timing, and timing in investing is often more important than brilliance. I want to pause here and ask you something gently. What rule about money were you taught that no longer feels true in your body? Not in your head, but in that quiet place where intuition lives. Sit with that question. You may find it revealing. As we come toward the end of our time together, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not failing. You were simply trained for a version of the world that is fading. That is not your fault, but it is now your responsibility to adapt. In every ecosystem I have studied, those who survive great change are not the loudest nor the most aggressive. They are the most attentive. They notice early. They move calmly. They conserve energy, and when opportunity appears, they are ready. Let me leave you with a simple truth, one you may wish to return to again and again. You are not broken. You are not late. You were simply taught the wrong rules for the world you now inhabit. If this way of seeing has eased something inside you, stay with us. Share your thoughts below, your questions, your doubts, your observations. And if this perspective resonates, consider subscribing, not for predictions, not for hype, but for clarity, calm, and understanding in uncertain times.